What childhood experiences have been most fundamental to shaping who you are today?
Wow. I certainly think leaving context, leaving my places that I was in and going to new places was a huge part of that. So, you know, having to move from an Indian context to a Chinese context, but to an American school, I think all of those shifts were really important because they forced me to understand that whatever context that was my context was not necessarily someone else's context. So I think just generally that was huge. I think a really important point, if I think about it, was boarding school. We were in Taiwan, and I went to India for boarding school in sixth grade for 1 year. And it was really my first leaving of my family. I had to get on a plane, and it was this crazy moment where I was all great and great and great, and then finally we get to the airport, and I just burst out crying because like, I don't want to leave you guys. But it was like really the first step of me stepping out of and figuring out what I had to do and by myself. It was only a year, but I think it gave me that first letting go of the family, letting go of those ideas, and then starting to go on Bijoy's journey. Even though I didn't probably actively do that until the next going away, which was when I took up my bags and got on a plane to go to Stanford.
Tell me more about that experience in boarding school.
Oh wow, it was crazy. It was actually the boarding school that my grandfather and his brothers went to. It was a Catholic boarding school in the foothills in these hills of Yercaud in Tamil Nadu in the southern part of India, and it was run by these brothers. So it was extremely strict. It was very regimented, but I thrived in it. I did really well academically, and I was sort of their blue-eyed boy. They just loved this little kid that loved academics, and I was just into everything.
Right.
I went to church every day. I mean, I had a morning mass that I went to every single day, and I loved it. Right? I mean, it was just part of what I did. But it was very strict. And there were just there was some dysfunction there, in terms of just the relationships between the brothers and the kids, and a lot of things that I think were, it was just unnecessary, physical beatings of kids when they didn't perform and things like that. Just all ways of interacting and treating kids. But I think on the other hand, it was such an idyllic, wonderful life for all of us because we had a regimen and we had a structure. And a guy that went to our boarding school, who's a filmmaker in India, made a film about the boarding school called Rockford. And so it was this hilarious thing where years ago I went to, it was a screening in Austin, and I show up at the theater I watched this movie, and I look at the opening scene, and it's like, oh my God, that's Montfort. That's the boarding school that I went to. And so, of course, and it was a very sweet story and everything else. And so by the end of it, he was there, the director, and he stood up and he said, you probably don't know this, but this boarding school that I went to, which is in India. And I said, actually. So